It's a celebration of America's freedom. Welcome to the Mark Scaringi Show. The Mark Scaringi Show is your place for a weekly discussion on making America great again. The important political and legal issues of the day, a celebration of the Constitution, and traditional American values. Mark is a practicing attorney, a former senatorial candidate, a Donald J. Trump-endorsed delegate, and a defender of the Constitution. His goal? To put America first. And now, celebrating America's freedoms, here's attorney Mark Scaringi.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Mark Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. Well, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has apologized for appearing in a 1980s photograph, either wearing blackface or a Ku Klux Klan robe and hat. He was in medical school at the time at Eastern Virginia Medical School. He graduated from that school in 1984. And this very controversial photograph appears in the medical school yearbook. And apparently this is the first time in this man's long political career that the photo has surfaced. The Virginia Democrat, during his apology video, did not indicate whether he was wearing blackface or the KKK outfit. And I think that's strange that he would not say. Perhaps he's trying to determine which one is worse. We don't quite know. He stated that I'm committed to continuing that fight through the remainder of my term and living up to the expectations you set for me when you elected me to serve. That was the video apology that he did regarding appearing in the photograph, but at the same time stating to the people and the voters of the Commonwealth of Virginia that he will continue to serve out the term for which the voters elected him to serve. He also released a statement acknowledging the photo is of him. And then today, in a stunning development in this story, Virginia State Senator Louise Lucas's office apparently told Fox News that Governor Northam reached out to her to say that he is not in the photograph and that he would not be resigning. The governor, after apologizing for appearing in the photograph, now apparently has told at least one Virginia State Senator that he either wasn't in the photo or doesn't know if it's him in the photo. And so that begs the question, how does one not know whether it's him in a photograph wearing blackface or a KKK costume? It would seem to me that would be a memorable occasion if one appeared wearing either. I think that showing up to a party wearing blackface or even wearing a full KKK outfit, including the robe and that goofy conical cap, that's something a person certainly should be able to remember, but the Democratic governor of Virginia apparently can't, although earlier he stated it was him in the photograph. Well, this is turning out to be quite a story. Northam, the governor, is due to hold a press conference at 2:30 today, so just beyond the Mark Scaringi Show hour from 1 to 2, so he won't be able to listen in on that press conference. It will be held outside the governor's mansion to address this controversy. But this governor is in the fight of his political life. Of course, Republicans are calling upon him to resign. Why wouldn't they? He's a Democrat. But Democrats and left-wing activists are also calling for his immediate resignation. And that's where, of course, it will hurt this governor. This is former Governor Terry McAuliffe. He said the situation that the Governor Northam has put himself in the Commonwealth of Virginia is untenable. It's time for Ralph to step down and for the Commonwealth to move forward. The former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe also said the photo is racist, unacceptable, and inexcusable at any age and at any time. Governor Terry McAuliffe, the former governor of Virginia, is, of course, a very close friend of Bill and Hillary Clinton, and you'll recall that Hillary Clinton, as a former member of the United States Senate when she was a U.S. Senator, lauded former West Virginia Senator Robert Byrd, calling him her teacher and mentor, someone she looks up to as a role model. He, of course, was a former member of the Ku Klux Klan. He was a Kleagle in the Klan, which I guess is a term denoting some form of leadership in the KKK. So I think it's a little ironic that former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe is now calling for the resignation of the incumbent governor of Virginia, when the former longtime serving United States Senator of West Virginia, Robert Byrd, was a member of the KKK for quite some time and held a leadership role in it. Of course, the Democratic Party has a long history in the KKK. The Democratic Party started the Klan, and it was the paramilitary domestic terrorist wing of the Democratic Party. It was used by Democrats in the South primarily to terrorize black Republicans and keep them away from the voting booths, because our Democratic friends, of course, did not want blacks who were Republicans overwhelmingly in the early part of the time period after the Civil War, and when black Americans got the franchise. They were overwhelmingly Republican because the Republican Party, of course, was founded on the abolition of slavery, and the Democratic Party was in favor of the continuation of slavery. So there's a long history. The KKK was formed by the Democratic Party, and so many Democrats over the years were members of the Klan, particularly in the South, and apparently the Klan membership and Klan association has resonated through modern times, in the modern era. Now this Ralph Northam, the Democratic governor of Virginia, he is now taking severe heat from both political parties and activists from the left and the right to resign for appearing in this photograph. The left-wing advocacy group MoveOn.org has urged Northam to resign. Julian Castro, a former Secretary of the Housing and Urban Development Department, former mayor of San Antonio, and now a 2020 presidential candidate, condemned Northam and said that he should resign. Castro tweeted yesterday, "It doesn't matter if he is a Republican or a Democrat. This behavior was racist and unconscionable. Governor Northam should resign." I thought that was an interesting way to characterize the controversy. Castro saying it doesn't matter whether he's a Republican or Democrat. Well, he's not a Republican, so it's not even an issue. He is a Democrat. He's a Democratic governor of Virginia, never a Republican, so not a relevant point to make. Nevertheless, the Democratic presidential candidate Julian Castro, decided to characterize it in that way. Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat of California, Representative Ted Lieu, Democrat of California, have called for Northam to resign in light of the photograph. And interestingly, and we'll talk more about the irony of this later in the show today, Planned Parenthood, the country's largest abortion provider and leftist political action group, has released a statement saying there is no place for Governor Ralph Northam's racist actions or language. He must step down as governor. So I want to talk more about the irony of Planned Parenthood calling on Governor Northam to resign. And I also want to know from my listeners, do you think the governor of Virginia should resign because he appeared, at least according to his earlier statement, in a photograph in the 1980s when he was in med school, wearing blackface or wearing a Ku Klux Klan robe and ceremonial cap? Should the governor of Virginia resign? I want to hear what you think. When we return from this brief commercial break, you're listening to The Mark Scaringi Show.
Now, more of Mark Scaringi on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to The Mark Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We talk about the important political and legal issues of the day. You can check out some prior podcasts of the show and the columns that I write for Penn Live and the Harrisburg Patriot News, and some merchandise we have on the MarkScaringiShow.com website. You can take a look there. You can also reach us on Harrisburg 100 Facebook Live. We're taking live comments and questions from the friends and followers of Harrisburg 100. And, of course, you can always hear me on WHP 580 and iHeartRadio. We're talking today about Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia, the Democratic governor under intense fire. Calls from the left and the right, Democrats and Republicans, to resign and resign immediately for appearing in a photograph when he was a med student back in the 80s, either wearing blackface or wearing the robes of the KKK, the Democratic paramilitary hate group from so long ago that apparently is still with us today, or at least into the 80s, according to this photograph. The governor of Virginia indicated last night that he would not be resigning, but he indicated it was him in the photograph, and he apologized for it, and he's going to work toward racial reconciliation and healing, et cetera, et cetera. But now apparently the news is breaking that the governor is calling Democratic state lawmakers, saying that it's either not him in the photo or he's not sure if it's him in the photo. And I'm just wondering, how does one not remember appearing at a party wearing blackface, or even more so, wearing the full robes and hat and regalia of the KKK? I would think that would be something that would be somewhat easy to remember if one adorned himself in such costumes. Yet the Democratic governor of Virginia now doesn't remember whether or not that was him or him in the photograph. He's going to hold a press conference at 2:30 today, and the nation is waiting with bated breath to hear what the man has to say. And I've asked my listeners to call in and let me know whether you think the governor should resign over this comments. We've gotten some calls. We have John from York. You're on the Mark Scaringi Show.
Well, hello. It's nice to talk to you again. I listen to your show regularly. Whether I agree or disagree, you get me to think.
Well, great. Thanks, John. So what do you think? Should he resign?
Sure. Why, the Ku Klux Klan and all white supremacist groups are evil, demonic, immoral, and disgusting. I mean, any low word I can find for them, I would call them. I hate racism of all kinds. I believe that people of all colors and races are members of the same family. God loves everybody. We're all in God's family. We should love each other and treat each other with honor and respect. I think he should resign. That's just unbelievable. And that guy named Byrd, what was he, the governor of West Virginia, you said?
Well, that was the long-time serving United States senator from West Virginia, and he ended up being the Senate pro temp, the highest-ranking senator in the United States Senate. That's Robert Byrd. Yeah,
that's it. I'm sorry, I didn't remember that. I don't think he should be in a position of power either if he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan for a long time.
Well, he's not going to bother us. He's since deceased. So.
Okay. Now, see, I didn't even realize that. Okay, I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this governor of Virginia. I hope he's changed. I mean, I don't know if he has or not, but regardless of whether he's changed his views or not, I don't think he should be in a position of power when he was in any way connected with a group like the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, they're so evil. I tend to think he should resign. I hope that's not cruel, but biblically speaking, any group like that is totally against the Bible and totally evil, and I don't like them. I don't like racism of any kind. We should all love each other.
Well, let me ask you this, John. Of course, we should all love each other, and the way you started your comments this afternoon I thought were beautiful and very well said. Now, of course, Governor Northam is going to declaim from the highest peaks of the highest mountains that he is not racist, that racism is evil, that bigotry is evil, and all of that. Of course, he's going to say that. So the issue is appearing in a photograph at some sort of probably a party in med school in the 80s. And apologizing for it when it is released many decades later. Is that enough, appearing in a photograph wearing blackface or a KKK robe? Is that sufficient to call upon an incumbent governor who was elected, by the way, by the people of Virginia? Is that enough to force his resignation?
Well, I'll tell you what. I know we should forgive people, especially if they've changed. If they've changed, we should forgive them and give them another chance, perhaps. But this is really bad. I mean, you can't. Any association with a group as evil as the Ku Klux Klan is really, really bad. Or any of the white supremacist groups. Like I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but I tend to think he should resign. I tend to think he should if he had any connection with anything like that. That's really bad.
Well, John from York, thanks for the call. I appreciate it when you call, as always. You always add some insightful and interesting comments. And And, of course, the governor is going to deny that he was associated with or related to the KKK, and there is no evidence that he was associated with or related to the Klan. He just wore a very offensive, both historically and contemporaneously, in current day, that the Klan is horrible and horribly offensive. This man chose, probably in jest, when he was a young student, he thought this was somehow humorous, somehow funny. Remember the photograph of Prince Harry, who is in line for the throne of Great Britain, the United Kingdom. He appeared at a party in some Nazi uniform and was roundly condemned for that. I don't know if he was asked to resign his position as a prince. I don't know if one can resign one's position as a prince. I think so. I think we had a former king of England abdicate the throne. So, that's where we are today. We're going to find out at 2:30 whether or not this governor will resign. The nation is waiting to hear what the governor has to say. But what I'm pointing out, and I also want to point out, is the irony of Planned Parenthood weighing in on this. Planned Parenthood is, of course, the country's largest abortion provider. It has indicated that the governor should resign immediately, indicating there's no place for Governor Ralph Northam's racist actions and language. He must step down. Now, of course, the history of Planned Parenthood, and I also want to get into the governor's statements at a press conference he held just days ago, and also when he appeared on a Virginia radio station to talk about a late-term abortion bill in Virginia. I want to talk about that as well. But Planned Parenthood, while we're on the topic, of course, was founded by Margaret Sanger. She's a feminist icon and hero among liberals and Democrats. But remember, Sanger was also a eugenicist. And she believed in racial purity and in purifying the American people and the people of the world, and getting rid of undesirable people through birth control and through abortion. In a 1932 speech entitled "My Way to Peace," Sanger proposed her step-by-step plan for international peace, and so the founder of modern-day Planned Parenthood indicated that in order to obtain world peace, the first step would be to control the intake and output of morons, mental defectives, and epileptics. The second step would be to take an inventory of the second group, such as illiterates, paupers, unemployables, criminals, prostitutes, dope fiends, and classify them in special departments under government medical protection and segregate them on farms and open spaces as long as necessary for the strengthening and development of moral conduct. And Margaret Sanger, the founder of modern-day Planned Parenthood, would only allow these undesirable Americans to be released from these gulags, these government-sponsored concentration camps and work camps. She would only allow them to be released if they improved their moral character and if they were sterilized, so that they wouldn't reproduce more undesirables, according to the founder of Planned Parenthood. So, of course, Margaret Sanger also appeared at a rally of the Ku Klux Klan and gave a speech that was apparently very well received. This was in 1926 in Silver Lake, New Jersey. She was received so warmly by the Women's Auxiliary of the KKK that she received a dozen invitations to speak at similar groups around the country, and this is according to her own autobiography. So Planned Parenthood, again, the country's largest abortion provider, has condemned Democratic Governor Ralph Northam for wearing blackface or a KKK costume. The governor is now not sure which, or if at all, when Planned Parenthood's own founder spoke at KKK rallies and advocated eugenics and the cleansing of the impurities of the races of the world. Now, I don't want to get too deep into eugenics and Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, but I think I've covered enough of it so that the irony is pretty clear when we have Planned Parenthood calling immediately for the resignation of the Democratic governor of Virginia for appearing in racially insensitive costumes and racist costumes, blackface and the KKK robe and cap. Now, with regard to Governor Northam, I think the man should certainly resign, and I think this man should resign because of what he has done and said with regard to abortion in America. Now, remember, Governor Northam just a few days ago and Democratic legislative leaders in Virginia held a press conference in the wake of very controversial statements this governor made on a radio show to defend Virginia's late-term abortion bill. Now, thank God that bill failed. Under current Virginia law, late-term abortions are permitted in circumstances in which 3 doctors determine the life or health of the mother are at risk. But under the bill, this was advocated by this Virginia governor, who is now really taking some heat for the photograph, but he also has been really taking some heat for his statements in support of this late-term abortion bill. This new bill would get rid of the need to have 3 doctors in order to permit the late-term abortion and bring it down to 1. And it also has some other very liberal, expansive changes to current Virginia abortion law to permit late-term abortions all the way up through delivery. And we're going to talk more about this when we return from this brief commercial break. You're listening to The Mark Scaringi Show.
Let's get back to The Mark Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Mark Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We're talking about the hot political and legal issues of the day, and we've got a hot one in the Commonwealth of Virginia right now. The incumbent Democratic governor, Ralph Northam, is under significant pressure to resign his office and to resign immediately for something that occurred back in the 1980s when he was a med student at med school in eastern Virginia. Apparently, he appeared, and the photograph is right there in the medical school yearbook on the page dedicated to Ralph Northam. There are 2 gentlemen, one appearing in blackface and the other appearing in the robes worn by members of the KKK. And the governor has issued a statement admitting it is he in that photograph, but he hasn't indicated which one he was. And now the news is circulating today that he's been calling some Democratic state legislators in Virginia, stating that maybe it's not him in the photograph, or he can't recall. So we'll see how this story develops. I think he's sinking quickly, and he's only harming his own political position the more he attempts to not justify, but the more he attempts to kind of distance himself now from the photograph that he already admitted he was in and apologized for. So we'll see how this develops, and I'm interested to know what my listeners think. You can call in 717-540-0580. That's 717-540-0580 should the governor of Virginia resign. We're also taking comments live on Harrisburg 100. We've got some good comments. Sean indicates that he should resign and resign right away. If it was a Republican, the left would have organized a large social justice mob at the governor's home. I think that's quite right. Harry Grace writes, what's crazy about the whole thing is he accused his opponent, Ed Gillespie, of being a racist. And that's a very good point that I failed to mention. When Northam was running for governor against Ed Gillespie, a former chairman of the Republican National Committee of some years ago, but it was the recent gubernatorial race there in Virginia, and Ed Gillespie simply put up some television ads indicating that Ralph Northam was supporting a sanctuary city policy for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and how we need to crack down on illegal immigration, to curtail and interdict and stop criminal gangs, MS-13, and others that come up from Central America. And Ralph Northam attacked him viciously, Ed Gillespie that is, for running those ads. And And Ralph Northam stated that Ed Gillespie was racist and bigoted for running those ads attacking Northam's position on sanctuary cities. So there's some irony there as well. Jeff Gurman writes, no, he should resign for supporting infanticide, and that's what we're going to talk about here in a bit. Dorothy Smith writes, he was 26, that was no kid. Yes, he should retire, resign, and do that right away. So there you have some comments from Harrisburg 100 Facebook Live. You can comment, and we'll read your comments live. Now, we're getting into this issue of this. This governor has been in quite a pickle for the past week. He's been at the center of national controversy with the photograph from the 80s, the racist apparel that had adorned him, and also for his recent position and statements and conduct regarding this late-term abortion bill in Virginia. And we're breaking down this bill, and we're talking about what it would do. Then I want to talk about the governor's involvement here. So under current law, there are 3 physicians that are necessary to certify that the life or health of the mother is at risk, thus permitting a late-term abortion in Virginia under this new bill that has been proposed and thankfully has been defeated. It would go from 3 physicians to 1 physician to make it necessary to permit the late-term abortion. Further, the bill would also get rid of the need to find that any such impairment to the women's health would be substantial and irremediable. So the bill would make it much easier to obtain a late-term abortion in Virginia. All the woman who desires to have the abortion would need to show is that having the child would impair her health, even in a way that the impairment is insubstantial and able to be remedied. I mean, that's what this bill would do. And by the way, by women's health, they mean mental as well as physical. So a Virginia woman could say, having this baby would cause an impairment of my mental health. Even when the baby is in the process of being born, the woman could claim under this new bill that the baby impairs her mental health or her physical health, so that she and the doctors would, if the doctors certify this, they would then kill the baby. The Virginia bill would also have allowed second trimester abortions to be performed in a clinic instead of a hospital, and that would be a financial boon to Planned Parenthood, which is the country's largest abortion provider and provider of abortions in clinics as opposed to hospitals, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company. Now, this new late-term abortion bill is sponsored by Democratic Delegate Kathy Tran, and this is where this whole controversy starts. Delegate Tran testified recently that her bill would allow an abortion even when the mother was in actual labor with the child, was actually delivering the child. And Governor Northam attempted to defend Tran's statement and her position when he spoke on a radio show, WTOP-FM, down there in Virginia. And the governor defended the bill, saying abortion could be considered even during birth if the baby suffered severe abnormalities. Now, Governor Northam is a former pediatric neurologist, and he was asked during this radio interview about these comments made by Delegate Tran during this legislative hearing. And the governor said that third trimester abortions are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physician, multiple physicians, by the way. It's done in cases where there may be severe deformities or there may be a fetus that's not viable. Now, all of that may be true, but that is not relevant to what the bill would allow. The bill would allow late-term abortions in cases that do not involve severe deformities of the child, in cases in which the child, the baby, is viable. So the governor is deflecting. But here's where the governor really gets into it. The governor said, so in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. Now, this is under this bill by Delegate Tran in Virginia. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. and then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So let's translate what the governor means. First, when he says the infant would be resuscitated, if that's what the mother and the family desired, he means the mother can decide, with the physician certification, whether to allow the baby to live or die. Second, when he says the mother and the family can decide, that's, of course, a patent lie. It is the mother and her physician who have the right under Virginia law to make the decision, not the family of the baby, and certainly not the father of the baby. The father of the baby has no right at all. Of course, that's a blatant violation of the due process and equal protection clauses of the United States Constitution, that fathers have no right to intervene when the mother who is carrying the father's baby, decides to abort the baby. And third, when the governor says then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother, by discussion, he means they will discuss whether to kill the baby that has just been delivered. So that's the translation and breakdown of what this Governor Ralph Northam was trying to explain about this new late-term abortion bill in Virginia, and why he advocates for it and supports it. He indicated that when we want the government not to be involved in these types of decisions, we want the decision to be made by the mother and their providers. And this is why legislators, most of whom are men, by the way, shouldn't be telling a woman what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body. So now male legislators, according to the governor, have no moral right to vote on an abortion-related bill because they're men. So do male voters not have the right to vote for or against political candidates based upon the candidate's position on abortion simply because the voter is a male? Or do we lose our right to vote on abortion issues or abortion bills if we're members of the legislature because we're men? That's what Governor Northam is saying, in addition to his advocacy for a late-term abortion bill that would allow a woman and her physician, if they determine that delivering the baby will impair her mental or physical health, to terminate that baby's life as the child is being born. Or in this gruesome discussion that the governor had on the radio station, perhaps even once the baby has been delivered and they're still making the decision. It gets pretty gruesome, as I say, when the governor is breaking down the effects of this late-term abortion bill. And I know I've got lots of callers on the line, so I want you to hold those calls. We're going to take a brief commercial break. When we're back, we're going to open up the phone lines and we're going to hear from our listeners whether Governor Northam should resign for the photographs from his medical school days. And I also want to hear from my listeners what they think about the late-term abortion bill in Virginia and Governor Ralph Northam's position on that. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this.
Now back to the Mark Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Mark Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And maybe today we'll add to that slogan that we also will talk about these issues from the perspective of putting babies first. We have a Virginia Democratic Governor, Ralph Northam, who supports a bill in the Virginia legislature to liberalize the late-term abortion laws in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The governor has taken a tremendous amount of heat for some horrid statements he made on a radio station and also in a press conference that he made, where he was describing that the woman, in consultation with her physician, will, under this new bill, have the right to essentially kill the baby as the baby is being delivered. That is where we are with this late-term abortion bill in Virginia. This same governor is also under intense political pressure to resign, of course, not for the infanticide statements that he makes, not for his support of infanticide. No, that's apparently legitimate. and a responsible and reasonable position to be held in today's world. But no, he's being called upon to resign for appearing in a photograph in the 1980s wearing blackface or a KKK costume. We're not sure which. He's not sure which. Although he apologized for appearing in the photograph, he's now not so sure that he was in the photograph. So this story is developing. The governor will give a press conference at 2:30. Right after the end of the Mark Scaringi show, and I guess we'll find out the end. We'll find out what the end of the story is. But let's open up the phone lines. We'll take some calls. We have, it looks like, Ellen from Hanover. You're on the Mark Scaringi show.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I wanted to talk. I do think he should resign, but for the reasons you gave, not for the photograph. And I think it's ironic that this was dug up at this time, and there may be a connection there. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the Democrat Party, probably briefly. I get so impatient with these people who are blindly loyal to that party. They don't want to face facts. And it's become progressively more immoral over the years. First of all, there was the racism, and if you remember, it was Eisenhower who integrated the schools. Then, to make it brief, we go on to Lyndon Johnson, who said in so many words that if he passed this Great Society bill, the N-word people would vote Democrat forever. He said that in so many words. So now we have the party of death, killing children. That's the future of our society. And we also have the destruction aspect of it. The leaders in that party want to change this country to something it's not, and by inviting people in who have no reason to assimilate, who don't want to assimilate. It's not a racial issue, it's just that things have changed in that regard, but who will vote Democrat. So all this ideology is just that they put forth is just a thin veneer for their insatiable need for power. And Nancy Pelosi said that. She said that on television. You aren't given power, you take power. And that's about all I had to say. But I get very impatient with these Democrats who worship being a Democrat. Almost worship. That's what it is. And they should open their eyes.
Well, Ellen from Hanover, I want to thank you for your call. And you're exactly right. The Democratic Party really has come a long way, baby, as they say, in the wrong direction. Remember, I say we, but I'm not a Democrat, of course, but the Democratic Party used to have very prominent leaders in its party who were pro-life. Think about our own former Governor Robert Casey Sr., two-term governor here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, famously pro-life, an advocate of the right to life for the innocent unborn. And remember, he went to the Democratic National Convention in 1992, and he wanted a speaking opportunity to talk about the importance of the right to life, and he was denied. He was shut down by the Democratic leadership at the time. Bill and Hillary Clinton, of course, the nominees for the Democratic nomination for the president, shut out our own Robert Casey from the Democratic Party from the speech there at the convention because he wanted to talk about the right to life. And now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, our Democratic friends are taking it to the extremes with this liberalization of the late-term abortion law in Virginia that is, by many definitions, is essentially legalizing infanticide. That's what the delegate who wrote the bill, Delegate Tran, that's what she testified to. That even once the woman is dilated and the process of birth is occurring, at that time, if the woman in consultation with her physician believes that having that baby will impair her health, mental health or physical health in an insubstantial way, that they can kill that child. And that's the horror story that's coming out of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And this governor's support for that should be reason enough for him to resign in absolute disgrace in his attempt to defend and advocate for this late-term abortion bill. Let's take some more calls. We have Philip from Wiccanisco. You're on the Mark Scaringi Show.
this is horrifying. This is beyond horrifying. This guy's insane. He's nuts. He's just nuts. That's all. I mean, you have the baby, and then you keep the baby warm and comfortable, and then you're going to kill the baby? You're telling me?
Yeah, it's horrible how he talks about the baby will be comforted while the woman and the physician...
This is Dr. Mengele. This is the Dr. Mengele from Germany. This sounds like. The famous doctor. You're familiar with Dr. Mengele, aren't you?
Of course I am, yes.
Okay, then that's what you got. Dr. Mengele just got reborn into our society, man.
Philip from Wiccanisco, I want to thank you for calling. Appreciate that. We've got Rick. You're on the Mark Scaringi Show.
Hey, Mark. Two quick things. This guy's got to step down because, A, he's shown racist policies, and B, he's pro-infanticide. And it's crazy. And another thing is, like, with Planned Parenthood, it's like they put nice labels on stuff. It's pro-choice or pro-life. No, it's pro-life or pro-death. And that's really where it's at. Let's call it what it is. It's, they changed the language to suit their needs.
Yeah, and I've talked earlier on the show about the origins of Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger, who spoke to a KKK rally in New Jersey, and how she was so warmly received. She received a dozen invitations to speak at other KKK rallies across the country. Why does one think she was warmly received? And what could she, a eugenicist who talked about the need for birth control to weed out the undesirables in our life, including the morons, which I guess is a pretty broad, could be defined pretty broadly. There are a lot who could fit that description.
Yeah.
And how we were going to put these morons and imbeciles and the unemployables and degenerates, we're going to put them in gulags, in concentration camps, and sterilize them so that they can't reproduce. She was speaking to the Klan, and she was warmly received. Why do you think she was warmly received by members of the Klan?
Because it was a way of just basically bringing, in her mind, the race back to what it should be.
I think you're exactly right, Rick, from, I'm not sure, maybe from Harrisburg, or I'm not sure where Rick is from, but I want to thank you for calling, and I think that's exactly right. She was a eugenicist. Several prominent leaders of the Nazi Party were as well. They wanted to purify the race, to build a master race. We had some of that here in the grand old United States of America during the Progressive era. For Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood, even to United States Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. So we have our own experience with that here. And the irony of Planned Parenthood condemning Governor Ralph Northam for the blackface photograph from 1984, when he is so publicly on record defending this late-term abortion bill in Virginia, is appalling to me. Planned Parenthood is so heavily invested in expanding infinitesimally the right to abortion, of course, because that enriches its bottom line. And its history with Margaret Sanger and racial purification is very, very scary. And it's something that's not recognized by the mainstream media, but it is a part of the founding of that organization. And just now, let's look at where we are today with Planned Parenthood. 79% of Planned Parenthood's surgical abortion facilities are located within walking distance of black or Hispanic communities. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's abortion surveillance report revealed that between 2007 and 2010, nearly 36% of all abortions in the United States were performed on black children, even though black Americans make up only 13% of our population. A further 21% of abortions were performed on Hispanics and 7% more on other minority groups, for a total of 64% of U.S. abortions, tragically, having been performed on minority groups in America today. And some would say Margaret Sanger and the founders of Planned Parenthood would be very proud of the effects of their legacy on the American people. I think that's a sad and tragic commentary on where we are today. This Governor, Ralph Northam of Virginia, should certainly resign. His support for a bill to essentially legalize infanticide in Virginia is horrible. It should be condemned. And let's wait to see what he says here at 2:30, whether or not he'll resign regarding the blackface and the KKK costume. His story is evolving, as we've discussed. Who knows where it will end up, but we'll find out in about 30 minutes. That's all the time we have today for the Mark Scaringi Show. I want to thank you all for listening and for commenting on Harrisburg 100 Facebook Live. We appreciate your interest in the show. Tune in next week, same time, same place.